So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to generate ideas for the Commission's draft of the letter to City Council. Graciously, folks are spending their evening with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. I have a draft, like initial ideas that I put together, like I said I would. I think it's probably best if I do that after what you all are going to present, because then I can modify based on those comments. Does that sound good? Okay. Sabrina, anything? Okay, great. With that, forgive me, I'll let you make your introductions, and please take it away. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret McCann. I'm the budget director for the city, and I'm here with Jim Shannon. He is the assistant budget director. And we're going to go over a brief overview. The proposed operating budget just got posted today, so it's on the city's website under the budget office, 1819. There's the proposed operating, the proposed capital budgets was already released, so you have both budgets out there now. So we're happy, but it just literally was released a few hours ago. So that makes us happy. Okay, so for the next slide, we'll go over just the total budget overview. It's a $3.5 billion budget. We have 116 funds and almost 6,400 full-time equivalent positions. So if you can see on this chart, the general fund is $1.2 billion, and it's a little over 30% of the budget. The capital is $781 million, and it's about 20% of our budget. And our special funds are $2.1 billion, or about 49% of our budget. So you have, like the airport, the water pollution control plant, our garbage service. A lot of our services, our enterprises are budgeted in the special funds. So that's just a high-level overview of our budget. And then next one that we're looking at. Certainly with the budget, as we're always required to do, all of our funds are brought into balance. We aren't allowed to not bring our funds into balance. We started with a general fund shortfall of $4.3 million, which was actually slightly better. When we had done our forecast in February, we had thought that the deficit for 18-19 was a little over $7 million. So it got slightly better. As a starting point, we had a little more information. Sales tax did a little bit better. We had some other little ups and downs. So we solved the 4.3 in this proposed budget, and part of that is we've actually set aside $15.5 million of one-time monies to cover the projected shortfall in 2019-2020. So we have in this budget set aside monies to deal with the projected shortfall at least one time for the next year. So we sort of take a multi-year approach. And in this budget, we look at the mayor's March budget message, provides direction to us about what they're expecting to see in the budget each year. And the targeted investments, these were the areas that were identified in the budget message from the mayor and council. Or through the mayor, and that was approved by the council. So we have the homelessness and housing, public safety, environment, the innovation and technology, education and youth, community engagement, and saving and improving fiscal sustainability. So the next slides we will talk about some of our budget changes in those areas. I could go through this. We did add some positions. We're up 2.3%, so we're almost at 6,400 positions. We are still well below the about 7,500 positions that we had before. We cut a few thousand, a couple thousand positions. So we are inching back up, but we still are actually not to where we once were in the city. So the next slide.
Is that gradual because of intentional, or is it just... If you could fill them all, you'd fill them all now, or is it intentionally you're going to catch up over 2 years, 3 years?
Well, this is these are budgeted positions, and actually these are budgeted FTEs, and not all of those are actually filled.
Okay.
And they're new, and part of it is just that we can't add. We just don't have the resources to add back. in the different funds. And there are some areas where we actually restructured how we did a service, so it won't be that you would necessarily ever bring all of the positions back. And some of them were just simply cuts. We made severe cuts, and we had our deficits. We had a decade of general fund shortfalls. There was a 3-year period where we had shortfalls of, I think, 89 million, 115 million, and 118 million consecutively.
Yeah, I remember
Where we
that.
actually had to lay off, which the city we really don't like to have to go there. But they just had, significant shortfalls that we had to address. So we've not been able
Okay.
to just bring ourselves back up to that level. So looking at our forecast over the next 5 years, we have 4.3 million that we're solving in this budget. Next year, we have 15.5 million, and then we have little deficits for 3 years, and then we actually have a projected surplus in the last year. Now, what these numbers do, they're assuming that in each year you solve your budget shortfall 100% with ongoing solutions. So in this one, if we have to solve that 4.3 ongoing, otherwise that shortfall would carry on to the next year. So to the extent that you solve all those problems ongoing, so if we solve the 15.5 million ongoing, we still then would have 8.9 million the next year. So that's how this chart works. But when we're looking at our budget, we have, $1.2 billion of sources and $1.2 billion of uses that are all moving around. And so when you're looking at these numbers, that percent of the annual budget, when it's compared to the combination of our sources and uses, it is really on the line. We're pretty much, this is a pretty even budget when you're thinking about, less than 1% up or down variance of our budget. So we're able to, that's pretty stable right now, and certainly these numbers don't, are not cause for alarm, and it's not cause for, oh, great, we have a lot of extra money to spend either. So, so that's sort of where we're starting there. So in the next slide, when we're looking at our general fund sources, so here's our $1.2 billion. And you can see property and tax and sales tax are our two biggest sources of funding that we have for the city. And right now you'll see fund balance carryover, it says 8.2%. We will, between the proposed and the adopted budget, we will rebudget funds. We carry over funds for different projects. That number will grow, and our actual total budget will grow from here. So we'll probably end up at 1.3 billion once we rebudget funds later on. And so then, and how do we use that use? So on the next slide, well, I don't know why that looks,
No,
I don't know what happened.
I haven't.
I don't know. Well, I don't, on your physical copies of this,
It's that.
it actually does,
That's what it is.
it says what it is.
Non-departmental.
That is so bizarre. That is really,
General government.
so,
That one, general government.
yeah, general government, and then the other is non-departmental.
Carry on.
That's right.
It's very odd. And so, you can see public safety gets the lion, they get that almost half of the budget here. And then you'll have community services, or your parks and your libraries. You have capital maintenance as your public works and our transportation. We have non-departmental, which is things like your reserves. We have some citywide appropriations that cross the whole city. And then general government is, human resources, IT, finance, budget, things like that. So when you're looking here by category, for the city, we are really a staff, we spend most of our money on people. So you'll see personal services at 71% for the general fund. Because our general fund, when you talk about the police, fire, libraries, those types of services are more people intensive. So that's our breakdown here, and then you'll see we have the non-personal citywide, and we have a little bit for capital in here. A lot of our capital is actually funded with special funds for that. And then on our next slide, let's see. Okay, so the next couple slides, we're going through different ads that we're doing in the budget that align with the different themes that were identified in the mayor's budget message. And I didn't bring a copy of the mayor's March budget message. I don't know if everyone may have. I didn't bring copies for people for that one. I mean, I probably have my message, but if you're looking at this one, so when we're looking at the category of homelessness and housing, there's a number of additions that we're doing in the budget that deal with that. The first item is we are adding a position in the housing department that deals with all of the housing projects that are underway. There's the goal of trying to certainly build a home, to build 25,000 housing units. This is a staffing person that helps with technical. The homeless services staffing, that makes permanent a position that supports our rapid rehousing program. The homelessness and housing, that is the $3 million that was directed in the mayor's message to set aside for the homeless. It was really set for homeless and housing to try to look at some solutions for interim housing. So that's the focus there. In the housing department, adding a public outreach program that includes a public information representative and a public information, the manager, that's not quite the right name. There's one of them that's the rep, and then the other one, maybe it is the manager. But so there's positions that we're adding to support the housing public outreach team. For the rental rights and referrals program, we have budget ads in both the housing department and in the attorney's office to do phase 3 of the rental rights and referrals program. So that's a phased one with their program. So that just implements it as it was envisioned. The council had approved the plan for that, and so they're just actually implementing the next phase of that. For Project Hope program, the Project Hope team, this adds a permanent team for Project Hope, and it adds 2 community coordinators and 1 community activity worker, and there'll be a team of one of the coordinators and activity workers for Project Hope that goes into different gang impacted areas. So there's a 2-person team, and they're in one area. They're planning to move to a different part of the city, but there is also another position that's being recommended ongoing to help maintain the areas where, as that team moves into a different area, there would be a position that can help support the efforts of the community for the area that they've left. So there's a Project Hope team, and that's ongoing. So the housing development planning staffing, there's 2 planners that are recommended that was directed in the mayor's message to help for all those planning projects to help push through the housing development with the goal of trying to get more housing built. And so there's planners, they don't want that to be the bottleneck, and so there's planning positions in there that was directed. Urban Village planning staffing, we're continuing some a grant-funded position for the Urban Village program. For the African American Community Services Agency upgrades, there's $250,000 that was directed in the message to go towards capital improvements at that facility. And so that is one of the things, that is the agency that will also be doing the meals for homeless, so they can go use that facility rather than the distribution at St. James Park. So that's one of the services that they're going to be doing, and so there's going to be some improvements to that facility. Okay, let's see, the next one's public safety. For the Office of Emergency Management staffing, we are adding, it's a total of 7 positions, but 4 of the positions are grant-funded, they're currently grant-funded, UOSI grant-funded positions that we've been doing with temporary staffing year after year. Because we get that UOSI funding pretty consistently, and we have money, at least that we know we'll have some money, we're limit dating those positions. So it's still one time, but it's just a permanent position. Well, we're adding 3 new positions in this area. We're adding a deputy director ongoing and a senior executive analyst ongoing, and then we're adding 1 senior executive analyst one time to deal with the many issues in there. There was direction to look at 5 different positions in that group, so we were able to add some resources there to deal with some of the emergency plans, CERT training, so there's things that we're looking there, and they're also adding some non-personal monies. For the aircraft rescue and firefighting, that is adding fire staff to the airport that support the airport. With the higher level of activity, they have gone to this Index D. They've actually had this higher requirement for a while. We've been staffing it with overtime. This would add permanent staff over a 2-year period to just fund that permanently with permanent staff.
I didn't see that airport as a revenue source. There is income derived from the airport for different things, their venues and vendors, fees and concessions and all that, plus aircraft landing fees and all that. I didn't see that on the income source.
That source was just for the general fund, and so we can't take, like for the airport, we can get reimbursement. The airport's reimbursing us for something we're funding in the general fund, but we can't take the airport landing fees as a source. Their airport funds, that's the one thing when you're looking at the budget, it's large at $3.5 billion. It's large, but a lot of those funding sources for those special funds and capital as well are restricted, so we can't use it. So we didn't do like an all funds.
So is that come under special funds?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's right. I'm sorry, that's right.
No, that's right.
Thank you.
And so. So this one just will add staffing.
So will this get reimbursed? Will this
Yes.
expense get reimbursed out of the airport?
Yeah, so the airport fully reimburses us for the police staffing and the fire staffing that we have there. So the fire department, there is a management reorganization. We are eliminating 2 of the fire, and it's funny sitting next to you, 2 of the fire division chiefs, because I know you're an expert with fire stuff. We're adding 1, so we're getting rid of the division chief, 2 division chief positions, which are between a deputy chief and a battalion chief. And we're adding 1 deputy chief that will oversee training and emergency medical services, and we're adding 1 battalion chief that will serve as the safety officer. And so those are the restructuring we're doing there. And then we're adding some funding for some calibration services for some monitors, gas detection monitors. In the police department, we're also doing a staffing reorganization. We are getting rid of 6 sergeant positions that staff the pre-processing center. We have like the 24/7, we're staffing the pre-processing, but there's very few people that actually go through our pre-processing center. We're not closing the pre-processing center. They will staff it as needed as they need to process somebody through there. But we are instead going to add a captain and 4 lieutenants to help with the patrol. The lieutenants would help oversee some of the patrol divisions, and then the captain will help with patrol, and then also with the community service officers and also the crime prevention. So they're looking at a reorg there with with their staffing. So the domestic violence
Excuse
assistance.
me, so in this reorg at the police department, is this basically sort of, we're eliminating this, but we're adding that, and we're kind of netting it all out?
It nets out. So those things sort of, those netted out. So that was a more efficient use of their resources. So we did that because that helps them more. For domestic violence assistance, there's $150,000 to deal with, that was also directed in the mayor's message, to help with trying to find some housing and some things like that. So in the cannabis regulation staffing, we're adding 2 analyst positions, and these are fee supported, and we're eliminating a code enforcement inspector. So there's a net addition of 1 position for there, because we're eliminating one of the 2 code enforcement inspectors, but we're adding 2 analysts, because they felt that's a better complement for the work that they have now to do.
And that's just exclusively around cannabis?
That's just for that cannabis, yes. And this is covered by regulatory fees, so that's, the cost of the positions are covered by fees.
So we are, and what about, wasn't there a sales tax or something on cannabis?
There is, so we have, we do get revenue from, we have a marijuana business tax.
Okay.
That's I think it's 10%, and so we get, so that is a revenue generator for the city. I think it's over $12 million we're projecting for next year from that.
Does that mean, so does that mean, who's going to do the code enforcement for cannabis business? Or is that part of the?
So the cannabis, so there is 1 code enforcement inspector that remains, and then there's the analytical staffing that will also help on enforcement. One of the things with most of the illegal cannabis operations, they have closed a lot down. We have 16 registered distributors or businesses. But at one point, they had more code enforcement inspectors. There was a point where we were closing down a lot of the illegal operations. So when they're looking now at what they need for police, when they were saying, and police and actually planning, building, and code enforcement, because the code enforcement positions were actually housed in PBC, planning, building, and code enforcement. They weren't housed in police, but police and PBCE, we're working at figuring out what's the best complement of staffing now, given the work and the type of work that we're doing. So they wanted to restructure that a little bit as they're seeing that. So that's what we're proposing there. We're continuing the $600,000 for the downtown foot patrol. This is the police foot patrol that they, I think it's 5 days a week. I'm going to say 5 hours. I might be wrong on that. It's in the proposal, but. So we're continuing that on again next year. For the NCAA College Football Championship that will be hosted here, we are adding $750,000 in overtime for the police department for that week of activities that we are expecting. So we'll see this here. We are also adding $100,000 in our Office of Economic Development to see if there's any sort of activity or sort of any money that we have to spend. When we had we had the Super Bowl, there were some improvements that we did, some minor improvements we did to get ready for that. And they'll have to see also with Christmas in the Park, it may change that schedule for Christmas in the Park. So there's some monies. There is $100,000 of TOT, the transient occupancy tax. We do think the event will at least cover enough to cover that $100,000, because we do expect increased hotel occupancy during that event.
I'm sorry, is this something that happens every year, this college
Oh.
and hockey?
No.
That's one time.
No, those
I
are
don't
not.
follow sports, obviously.
No.
But I did notice we put a lot of money into Super Bowl, and Comic-Con was actually brought more people into town. So I think we spent money in the wrong thing, so I'm just wondering if we learned from that.
The NHL will be at the arena here, they'll be held here, so that's local, and also with the NCAA will also be at the arena too, right?
So NCAA, that's
That's
going
at
to be
Levi's.
at
That's
the,
Levi's. That'll be at Levi's.
Levi, I was gonna say, where do the 49ers play?
Won't be in San Jose.
Oh, it's
But
football, I'm sorry.
It's football,
I
no,
thought
it is
basketball.
football,
It's football,
but a
excuse me.
lot of the events and people will be here, and there's events that are focused, that are.
So you guys mentioned that, because I think it makes sense that hockey, I mean, we have it here in San
Yes.
Jose, but I would just say I'm worried of us investing money as a city for an event where someone else,
Santa Clara.
it's happening
Santa Clara,
somewhere else,
yeah.
Santa Clara has money.
Yes.
They're gonna be staying here.
So I mean,
Abundance of
are we
riches.
measuring to make sure that next year before we try to welcome NCAA college football that is actually in Santa Clara? I mean, it just doesn't make sense that we would invest money without learning, you know, do we go back and measure, was this a successful investment? Or do you guys just play it by ear?
We
or-
collect metrics, for example, coming into our airport, we're gonna have, like, we gotta know people coming into the airport if they're
Yeah.
going to those events.
Yeah, and I'm not sure with their Office of Economic Development, I think that they will look at even trying to figure out how much was our hotel occupancy this year compared to last year at that same period of time, to see how that
So there's
works.
no way for you to know if this money that you're investing actually was in the right events?
Well, it's hard, you know, there will be a lot of economic activity. There are scheduled events that are in San Jose, so a lot of the events are going to be here.
Which is a big difference from the Super Bowl. Most of the events were in San Francisco.
No,
With this
you guys
event,
did a whole thing downtown here, I remember. And it was the following weekend when all my nerd friends showed up and we came to Comic-Con, that everything was actually used. So I'm just wondering if we're learning from when things say, you try different things and if they don't work, then you try something else. So I'm just wondering if we apply that logic here.
well, I think so. I think they are a little bit too different though. But so for the NCAA college football and the hockey, but those costs are for the police to make sure that the people who are going to be in downtown and the city are safe. So we're anticipating sort of a large contingent of people actually in events in San Jose. Most of those events are going to be fee funded, so they're paying for events, they're paying for the city to do certain things, whatever. But with that activity, we want to make sure that the police department has the resources to provide the security, to make sure they're on call. And so that's why that funding is here, because that event is happening. It's not that college football event is not a city-funded event that's just happening. We just need to sort of prepare to make sure our residents are safe.
Do you know if the
Quick,
county's
folks,
putting?
hold on, so let me just do a quick, excuse me, can I do a quick time check and process check? Okay, so, sorry. So I didn't set this up in advance time-wise, and I didn't set it up as like a meeting structure. So, so first time, we started late, and we're gonna end at 9:15. Many of us have to be physically home by then. So we have about an hour and 15 minutes. We have a couple things to do. One is to take advantage of the wealth of knowledge here, and then to review the budget letter in advance of the next meeting. We have to approve that budget letter at the next meeting so that it's worthy of, so that it makes it into consideration for the study week. So how long do folks think we need to review the budget letter?
So I have a question is, since our charter from the council is, you know, public safety, transportation, neighborhood quality of life, shouldn't we be focusing on those issues? I mean, we're not going to have, at least my feeling is, we wouldn't have input on the NCAA college football or the hockey program.
So
would it
thank
be
you.
possible for us to focus on those three areas that we actually are chartered to do?
Yep, so I think that overall, thank you for the feedback. So when you're, may I ask, to kind of highlight the areas that are in, we could spend all night talking about the exact issues the meeting is talking about. We would get so deep in the weeds, we'd be here till like 2 or 3 in the morning. So if you can highlight those where you think they apply, how long do folks think we need to look at the budget letter?
At least an hour.
At least an hour?
I would think so.
It's 8 o'clock now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did it take us last year?
Do we have any kind of a draft? She has a draft.
Yeah, we have a.
So how long do we want for that? We will end at 9:15.
Who said an hour? Me?
It should be less. I'm trying to
Nicole,
remember.
what was it like last year?
It doesn't apply.
Yeah.
It's, the past is not a guide.
I think
So-
you'll allow an hour.
Allow an hour? Okay.
So 15 minutes.
Does that, give you what you need?
Yes, I could go much faster on this
Okay.
stuff. I do not have to go through this
Okay.
level
But the
of
point is,
detail. I
a
will.
good point to focus
Yeah.
on.
Okay.
on
So,
Yes.
where our
Michael,
charter
thank you.
is,
Michael,
that
thank
Our
you.
charter is.
Way to go,
It's
Michael.
narrow. Yeah, because I don't have to go through all. I was just trying to give you this.
No, no,
That's-
thank you,
and
that's
that
great.
was good,
We love hearing
Yeah, and so
Right.
I will go quicker, and then maybe you guys just
me.
You guys just slow me down if you guys, or I can go through real quick and then you guys can ask questions about some of these.
If you,
Real quick, and we can ask questions.
if you want to be recognized, hold up your thing, but really, it's just so much better to hold questions, given that we have 15 minutes.
Okay.
And Margaret McCahan, you can email Margaret, Sabrina can be a conduit, we all have a million questions.
Email.
Excuse me, or email Sabrina, email Sabrina. I'd suggest holding our questions, otherwise we will never get this done in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, I will go quickly here.
Thank you, Margaret,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, and I'm sorry, you had what were your
Public
areas?
safety.
Public safety, transportation.
Code enforcement and transportation.
Yeah,
Legal one, these are-
oh, okay. All right, we have a grant staffing position, there's help funding a lieutenant. We're continuing recruiting and backgrounding funding, which we've been doing. Regional audit task force, we have some reimbursement monies that we're getting from the state that we then are gonna use for some equipment and items there. School crossing guard, we're adding ongoing a supervisor to help that. We have been doing that, but that adds that permanently, which has been very helpful. St. James Park Security, so we're adding a park ranger that'll help provide security. It's funded by that district, not a general fund item. City Hall security, we are adding 2 officers for this campus and doing some physical improvements to the safety here. And in the library, we are adding 1.5 security officers to augment the 1 security officer that they already have to do the branch libraries. This isn't the main libraries, is done differently. Okay, so environment, I really will go quick. This is not your area, right? So do you even want me to go through this one?
What's the big,
Okay.
what's the big, like, one thing?
Oh, there's not, I mean, biosolids as a staff, climate smart, that was directed in the message, it's 100,000, it's
Trash
not
capture
much.
is, I think, the one that's.
You really like
I don't really. think
Trash
these
and
ones-
street sweeping would be important.
Street sweeping and, so we're adding an inspector for the street sweeping, because there was 44 miles added the other year, so this adds the staffing to help make sure that that street sweeping is done, so that's an inspector for
What was
that.
that had anything to do with litter and stuff, the trash capture?
The trash capture device, that's maintenance, those are large devices so that, for our storm system. And so it's the storm system that's for, so these are innovation and technology items. The My San Jose app would be of interest. So there's some improvements to the app and improvements to try to look at processes, to try to make that work better. So there's $1.5 million for that. We're adding, in the Office of Innovation, there's a data position that we're adding to try to work. There's all these smart city, all these initiatives of things that we're trying to do, and we want to have a data person. And then we're adding for open data environment. The licensing is not a big deal. I don't think payroll's that interesting. Let's see. The integrated permit system staffing, that's just continuing staffing and planning and building. And the fire department to keep their system that hasn't gone live yet for the building permits. Probably not really your area either. Let's see. Parks irrigation technology, and that might be of more interest. We are adding, we have some smart controllers. We're adding some, an IT position, and we're adding some, the smartphones and some technology to try to make our irrigation systems work better, so you're not watering when it's raining, or you can identify leaks quicker. And so it's trying to be more efficient in that. So there is some improvements that we're looking to do there. I'm looking at privacy and data security for their innovation roadmap. Let's see, I'm not sure that there's anything else on that. So for education education in our youth. We're adding a librarian that will help in some education initiatives like the Coding 5K, and that's funded by the library parcel tax. We're continuing ongoing funding for San Jose Learns and San Jose Works, both directed in the mayor's message and also service year. There's some funding for that. The mayor's gang prevention task force staffing, we are adding an analyst to help with some management type of tasks. We are adding recreation program scholarships. There is some additional fee revenue we expect from in the parks in their fee programs, like their classes and their after-school programming. And so there's $100,000 more for scholarships for people that would qualify. And we're continuing walk and roll staffing. It's grant funded in DOT. And let's see, community engagement. We're adding the anti-litter staffing. We added some temporary staff. We're adding 2 positions ongoing to help out with efforts there. We're continuing staffing, city staffing for aquatics. We're having a hard time getting a third-party operator for that. We're continuing $200,000 for the Beautify San Jose grants. That's in addition to $100,000 that's ongoing in the base to support the grants there. And so we talked about the national championship. There's $50,000 for the ethnic and minority-led small business grant program that's continuing. We're adding a special events coordinator funded by the TOT fund. For placemaking and park activation, we are adding 7 positions and about $820,000 in PRNS, and about $520,000 of it is offset by grants. So there's a net cost of about $300,000, but that does the Viva Calle, Viva Parks activities and some activation at like Cesar Chavez. So let me see, I'm trying to go fast here. And we're continuing some money for the San Jose street litter and trash removal, and there's $50,000 for Silicon Valley Talent Partnership. For Sports Authority, we're adding $350,000 there, and for the Vietnamese American Community Center, we're continuing city staffing for that for another year. The goal would be to try to have that as a reuse. That one also, the city's having a hard time finding an operator for that. All right, and I think, how many more do I have here? Savings. So the airport concessions consultant and bond feasibility, they're there. That's not really in your area.
New park
Did it
direct.
wrong.
Nicole?
Huh?
Hold on, Commissioner Young.
So, since we do want to really concentrate on the budget letter, I'm looking at the rest of the
Oh,
presentation.
any
I
of
don't think I may be wrong, but maybe get a consensus from others whether we need to go through these last 3 slides.
I'd like to hear.
I would too.
Okay.
I will go really fast, so just
I think
highlight.
we've got 7 minutes.
Okay, so
At your leisure.
I'm gonna do quick here. We are doing some steered-on station area planning for this area. A lot of that's grant funded. There's 1.6 million or so that we're adding, but 1.3 of it's offset by, not grant, but it's like a service agreement with Google money, so it's offset. There's some at our convention, or cultural facilities. There's funding set aside for that. There's a number of them here. And then, I think we could go to the next slide. These ones for our utilities, there's no storm sewer increase. There's 3% for our sewer service and use charge fee. You may have gotten notices anyways. For the Recycle Plus garbage, a 2% increase for multifamily, 3% increase for single family. The Muni Water, if you're in the Muni Water area, there's an average about a 5.6% increase. Development fee programs, there will be some increases in some public works and planning. We're implementing that. And then there's just other fee increases and changes and decreases, actually. Sometimes they'll go down depending on cost, which a lot of the fees are cost recovery, so that's that. And I think the next slide It's just our next steps. There's 5 community budget meetings. I handed out the flyer for everybody. You probably already know that as this group. The study sessions will start next week. They're May 9th through the 14th. Usually they will go through the 11th. The 14th is a hold date. And then we have the 2 public hearings on the 15th of May and then June 11th. The mayor's budget message, which I think you're trying to get your letter out, that gets released June 1st, and then you'll see the dates of they approve the message on the 12th, and we have the final adoption and the formal adoption on the 19th. So that was really quick, and I have,
Thank you.
few minutes, if there's any last questions anyone has?
Commissioner Young.
Oh, a question, first of all, thank you very much to the city staff for being here. That was a great presentation. I'm sorry you had to rush through part of it. I wish we had the time to listen to it. It's fascinating. And Sabrina, this may be a question for you, but my question is on the study sessions and the public budget hearings. Is it possible to have somebody, a representative from our commission there during the public comment period?
Yes, absolutely. Those are public meetings, so you guys are allowed to go for sure and make public comment. I would just be careful about talking side conversations if you're all
Right.
there.
Can we only go as residents, or can we, in other words, could the neighborhoods commission appoint a representative to go to different meetings and give our?
You could, it would have, I was gonna say have to be at the next meeting, but actually I think it would have to be the June meeting because the agenda for the next meeting is already out. You guys would have to vote on it. You'd have to vote to approve it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but we can go as residents, is that correct?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Should go.
Any other questions?
Question.
Commissioner Martin?
haven't got him.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Commissioner Martin, then Commissioner Carter.
So in this budget number, and I was trying to follow it, where was the deferred infrastructure and maintenance kind of part of it, right? So, I mean, I know there's a lot of roadway questions and issues that keep popping up in our area. And so I'm trying to figure out where that was in the numbers that you were showing us.
And a lot of that actually gets covered in our capital budget,
Okay,
which is the separate capital budget. I would think, you'll see like all the pavement maintenance is covered in our capital budget.
got it,
Which is also released.
got it. So it's not coming out of the general fund at all then?
The pavement maintenance is not coming out of the general fund.
Except the local sales tax.
Except for local sales tax part, exactly. You're going where I was going with it, yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you.
2 questions, they're both kind of related. You mentioned that the city is definitely understaffed, which I recognize. Is it because, and you said lack of resources. Is it lack of resources in the human resources department and the personnel department in hiring? They can't hire, they don't have enough resources to complete the hiring? Is that what it is?
No, I mean, I think sometimes that's an issue too. We've had hiring challenges as well, so we've had that. But I think that we just don't have the financial resources, because every department, when you look at our city, and almost any general funded department here, and you compare it to any department elsewhere, we're one of the lowest, amount. We just, the revenue structure of the city and how much revenue we have, we can only afford so much
Are they hiring support staff to support the positions that are named, the changes that they're making? Are they hiring support staff to go along with the changes?
like,
Analysts,
yeah, I think,
FICA's team?
right, I think we try to balance the ads to support if we're adding something. I think we try to do a good mix.
Last question.
You had, early slides, you had 6,000 FTE, these positions. I kind of get the impression that they were funded, they were billets, they were funded positions that
Right.
somebody could walk in and get hired and fill those. So I didn't understand your follow-up to there. So if 500 people came in who were qualified, you could hire 500 people because you got them funded for it.
Yeah, so the FTEs are how many budgeted positions we have. we've had in recent years, and I think we've had an issue filling all of our vacancies, so we would have like 800 vacancies. So that's been a challenge, so we actually have been struggling with filling the positions that we do have budgeted, and we struggle with having enough budget to add more positions.
But, and I guess I'm sorry, so how many vacancies do you have? You're funded for 6,000 plus, but how many vacancies do you have?
I think it's like 600 around.
Oh,
And we have 1 minute. Commissioner Celestin.
Yes, mine is just where in the budget would I be able to see sort of the commitments that Google is making to us and that we are making to Google?
I don't think in the budget that it's going to get that specific. There's a proposal that describes, we have $1.6 million. It's like $1,580,000 or something like that, or 680. Or there is a budget proposal in there, and it'll have a little bit of information. But I think that the service, there's an agreement, I think, that is being developed. I'm not that close to it, Jim. I'm not sure if that's gone to council or if it's going to go to council.
I think that's under development still.
It's under development, because that one I think would then probably describe in more detail. And there was an action, we originally had some, I think there was a council memo that described some of the actions about, in general, what we were expecting. So there was one council memo, I think, that's gone on that topic. I'm just not an expert on the specifics of it.
I think about February 13th, all I want to say. I just looked at that, I think.
Yeah.
I'll go find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for making time for us. Thank you for the effort.
Thank you.
We really
Thank you.
appreciate your work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Expensive to the council. If we put that in there, when they've told us it's not in our charter, I don't see any reason for that, and I think it actually is going to make some of the council members upset.
Oh, no, it's not.
Hold, side, guys, please. Respectful, bring it all back. Hello.
I'm just
Okay.
putting my hand up.
Commissioner Hammond, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a brand-new homeless encampment behind my house, and yeah, it's offensive. It's also unsafe for my community. We've had burglaries. Unfortunately, there's very few burglary officers available. It's unsafe. I don't know how you can say that this isn't something we should address. We definitely should be addressing this.
It's adjacent to.
Commissioner Velasquez.
I think it's perfectly summed up. While it is out of our scope, right, we're acknowledging that, but even in my district, District 7, we're smack dab in the middle of everything. Like, this is the number one thing that we hear.
Me
So
too.
it'd be kind of, re-acknowledging that, right, that, this does affect us, right, everyone who lives there.
I think if we don't include it, I hear about it may be offensive. I feel like if we don't include it and the public reads it, it makes us look kind of clueless.
It does.
Like you keep talking, like everything I tell you is homelessness.
Mhm.
I think you're responsible for homelessness. You tell me you're not, but I expect you to do it, and then you don't even acknowledge it anywhere. That's the goal there. Let's see if there's anyone else who hasn't spoken yet. Commissioner Martin.
So it is a public safety issue, it is a
Yeah.
code enforcement issue,
I know.
it does come underneath our purview.
No, it's-
And yes, we have talked about it over and over and over again, and I don't want this to turn into a homeless discussion,
Okay.
please. So, I'm okay with the way it's written.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Okay. I've raised this issue at several meetings, even outside the venue of the commission, because it's countywide. The county needs to step up and take more. It affects San Jose, but unfortunately, San Jose is doing the lion's share of the work in the county. I don't see a homeless issue in Cupertino or Campbell or several other cities, and they got the money. They have the money, and I've raised this at county meetings and all that. I think the paragraph is fine the way it is, we address it.
Okay. Commissioner.
Nicole, can we take a vote on whether we accept this
Yes.
paragraph as is?
From a
No, that's
process
not good.
standpoint, let's hold off, just because I get where you're going. Commissioner Young, this is the last comment.
So, yeah, sure. So,
Not for you, but last
yeah,
of
no,
this
no, I
section.
understand, no problem. So again, you said for the public, this is not going to the public.
Yes, it
My
is.
understanding, unless I'm
It's a public
incorrect,
document.
it's going
It's
to the
public
council
document.
members
It's gonna get posted
and the
on
mayor.
next door, it's gonna get
I'm sorry?
posted everywhere.
So,
So for the process question regarding this goes in as part of one of the MBAs that comes out of the city manager's office, which means that it's a public document.
NDA being,
MBA, Mayor's Budget Addendum, that's what
Okay.
it stands for. So it will be published, and it will be available. You'd have to find it, and then there will be a cover memo, which I will write, and then it will be attached underneath it, but it's a public document, so,
Okay.
yeah.
But I'm
It'll be
posting
found
it,
faster if we say something silly.
I'm posting it on Nextdoor. The minute it's, the minute it finds its way into the public, that's what my people want to know. What is it you do?
I share it with my HOA too.
I share it one like.
And whether,
Okay.
okay, good. I
So
don't
what do
wanna
we do
get
now?
hung up. Okay, so thank you for the feedback there. I think the next piece then is if we're doing an executive summary, what does that look like? What is it comprised of? What are we highlighting? Commissioner
My
Celeste.
suggestion is that we just say, here are the 3 challenges our neighborhoods face, and here's our recommendation to address that challenge.
I'm going to take notes as well.
Yeah.
Okay. What's number 1?
It's your 3 bullets.
It's 3.
He means the 3 headers
So
in
we'll
the
do
section
three
over here,
things on
thing.
transportation safety.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak out of order.
Code enforcement.
We'll open it nice with, we're the neighborhoods commission, we represent, we've got, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The who we are sentence,
Yeah,
and then just get into it.
okay. So executive summary, key takeaway. I'll ask Sabrina what city speak is for just read this.
Yeah.
So code enforcement, so what is the key item?
Well, if we go to her comments that she's already done.
But
Yep.
just for overall feedback. Michael, did you have a specific thing that you,
I'm sorry, on code enforcement?
yeah,
I would defer to Commissioner Carter.
okay,
That
sorry.
was for staffing.
Staffing, okay. Increase
Michael had the
Yeah.
transcript.
that's it.
staffing for code enforcement. Okay, the code enforcement.
It wouldn't be I thought that was the purpose of you doing the comments on.
I'm just putting in the executive summary, that's all. It's still here, it's still in the comments, it's
Okay.
just, I'm
But
adding.
I would think, we came up with 6 things,
Right,
and a couple of them were things that you had
Mhm.
mentioned. Those should just be put up there. I mean, that
Right.
was, yeah.
but I'm just for my own sanity.
Okay, all right.
Just to absorb it. So code enforcement is increase staffing for code enforcement. Public safety,
Not the San Jose, yeah.
Just public safety now.
Public safety is
Traffic.
Code enforcement's
illegal
different.
fireworks.
No, I mean for what matters, right? It's our focus on fireworks.
Code enforcement
And-
doesn't come under the fireworks. That's-
Traffic, we haven't,
Traffic enforcement is not only enforcement, because right now they only have 7 officers.
They'll call it code enforcement officers.
so if we're
Fireworks.
talking about 2 things, if we're saying we want to add traffic enforcement,
Yeah, but that's kind of the fireworks.
we want to add it down in
Code
public
enforcement.
safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to add making this document longer than 2 pages?
Yes, houses, cars.
Well, there's actually several additions that are recommended for this section, so
I'm trying to get the
I don't know if this is now when you guys want to vote, do your straw votes on what to include and what to exclude.
That's a good point. Okay, so to get to a bulleted section for code enforcement, how many bullets do we want to include for code enforcement?
No
I
more
I
guess
think
three.
some of those you could summarize.
Okay.
There's 3 or 4 on substations. There's a couple on the fireworks.
And we have speeders.
Yeah, I mean, that probably captures all.
So again, the
Yeah, I don't want
control-
traffic
So, but I feel like we need to
enforcement.
cut back on
Yeah.
Commissioner
So,
Young.
yes, so, again, I might be the only one that's not in favor of opening up more substations, but I would, rather than put it in the letter without us taking a vote, is it possible to
We can
poll or
vote,
take a vote?
we can vote on the list here if we want.
Okay.
I think from the high level standpoint that I wrote this at, that seems acceptable. Adding more doesn't, adding more doesn't help, if you will. So do you guys, so let's take a vote on
Sure,
to include or not to include.
yes.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Why don't we put everything in it now and then come back at the next meeting? Because it's too confusing, what's in, what's out. Let's give us something that we can swing at. Because right now, you know, I don't think there is a police substation in North San Jose, for example. So let's get everything down on there, detail it, write it, then come back and pull out the sections that we don't want.
Except,
You know that kind of stuff.
except I'd like to get a feel for whether I should take the, I like that idea. And I'd like to get a feel for whether I should take the time to write that all out, research it, you know, like, oh, I'm happy to do whatever it takes, and it takes time to do that. So, if there's a, I think illegal fireworks stays, people can sing out not. Funding for staffing, for enforcement. I think so, I mean,
Let's just vote.
That was the only controversial one, I think,
what,
was the
substations?
substation.
Okay, let's vote, so,
Can I say something before you vote?
yes,
Okay, what I'd like to say is, there is no North San Jose substation, it's an Alviso substation. I had a gun put in my face 2 years ago, and it took the police department 45 minutes to get to my house. If there had been a substation open in Alviso, it would have taken 2 minutes. I could walk there in 5.
okay, all right. So, the question then on the table, I'll write up the items that we include, but fireworks will be there. Additional staffing will be included because it sort of has to be. Making the website available year-round will be part of adding to fireworks. And then the questions about substations and fire stations seem to be the main thing. So let's vote on whether I should write up a paragraph on substations. So if you're in favor of
Is it,
Is it a
Oh,
paragraph?
it's a paragraph or just add, we're just agreeing whether or
Just a
not it should be
sentence?
included at
doesn't-
all?
It
I think it needs
doesn't
to be a
make sense there.
paragraph.
Oh, in addition, by the way, after all this about illegal fireworks, by the way, you should make all these substations open. I could. I mean, I don't know. If you guys think it's like a 1 or 2 sentence thing, that's fine.
Yeah. I don't
Oh, that's
see
fine.
it.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Then I'll do, Pete, thank you for the suggestion. I'll do that. I'll write up everything in a short way. And then I'll write up the executive summary based on that. And then at the next meeting, we'll need pretty much the whole meeting.
I think
We don't have the whole meeting. We'll need as much possible time.
You guys can always make a decision to defer things on your agenda, but yeah.
We'll see that, okay.
I just
Which
have
is
a
next year's
clarification.
agenda.
It's June's
Are we
agenda.
including like a sentence about opening and closed substations? Or
For-
just specifically
I
to
think
these
that's all it is.
districts?
I'm going to add what Commissioner Cole suggested was add it all in and then let us take it out next week. Because then we can actually see the full picture and the full impact. So I don't think there's anything to vote on. Commissioner Cunningham.
I have a question on the timing, and I realize, next month we have a jammed agenda. We used to meet 2.5 hours, and that was reduced down to 2 hours. Is there any, and I don't know what the driver is for this, and I don't know what the availability of the other commissioners are. Is it possible, we have a normal start time of 6, could we possibly start at 30? If we have a hard stop at
Not
9
anymore.
o'clock.
Not anymore.
No, because
Not
the agenda's published.
What's that?
The agenda's
It's public.
published.
We can't do that to the public.
Yeah. The agenda, it starts at 6,
we could
it's on the
extend
agenda. You could extend it, you could
So-
run over.
But I really don't want to do that.
No, but.
I mean,
but I'm just saying-
but
Yeah,
just-
we got, 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound.
But I feel like if we're substantially agreed on the format, then I feel like we can get through it next week. The key piece will be the bullets at the top and making sure that those are clear and coherent and meaningful. But I don't think that will be an issue.
We just have to vote and not talk. I mean, you vote
'Cause we're done for
and
that?
majority says it's there, it stays, we're done. If it isn't, it goes. Cause she's right, because we still have the bylaws to do next.
Oh, yeah.
And there's the caucus, people will be done with the caucuses by then, there'll
caucus.
be a report, there'll be some movement
I'm
from
gonna
the
do that
ICOC.
written.
No, but I'm just
We don't
saying,
take time
like,
on it.
it's,
So putting a note on the
There.
door saying we started early, sorry, doesn't work.
it's
No.
no.
Okay, all right, so then,
Why not?
then the next step, and we're gonna finish up, the next step then is I'll incorporate the feedback that Sabrina captured, and then any other feedback that I can think of. I'll have as much of the kitchen sink in that document as possible. I'll make as many syntactic changes as I can, and then at the next meeting, we'll review it. It will be part of the package for review in advance, right? It will get sent in advance?
If you can get it to me by tomorrow
Yesterday.
afternoon.
I think I can.
Okay, yeah.
But then it gives the commissioners time to review it, but again, review it with the intention that your review time is not going to equal the amount of time you have to make changes at the meeting. Like maybe 1 or 2 changes or ideas, and then we'll probably do a round table. I think that might be the most effective if we can do it quickly. So Commissioner Cole said you've done this before. Do you have any thoughts or feedback other than the format preference? No? Okay. He's what? Good. Okay.
It's a short timer.
Is there anything else?
Thoughtful, not thoughtless.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank